Hello, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. And as you can plainly see, we are continuing on today with the Fighter's Guide, digging right into the Fighter's class abilities. Now, as you will see here in a few moments, fighters don't get a huge range of abilities. It's actually rather limited overall. But what they do get is a nice slew of bonus feats. So let's just go ahead and dive right in and see what exactly we're going to be working with here. To begin with, fighters are going to be proficient with all simple and martial weapons, light, medium, heavy armor, and their shields, up to and including tower shields, which is just great. This gives you a huge array of different build options. I mean, we are going to go with the heavily armored melee fighter kind of build, but you can do a lot of different things overall if you want to deviate from this guide, which I definitely encourage you to do because, well, this is something near and dear to my heart. It's just something that I prefer to play with. Go around and figure out what exactly your play style is and what fits well with the setting as well. But anyways, we could talk about that for way too long. Next up is bonus feats. From level 1 to 20, you get 11 feats. The only limitation to them is that they need to be selected from combat feats, but there are plenty of combat feats to be had, and given that our class and this particular build is focused on combat, this doesn't hurt us in any way, shape, or form. The next ability that fighters get is Bravery. It's a +1 bonus on will saves versus fear, increasing by 1 every 4 levels. So from 3 you get to 7, then 11, on and on. It's nice, but it is very limited because while fear effects do happen, not every creature uses fear effects. But given that our will saves are pretty poor, having a bonus for when this does come up makes sense and it is helpful. But with that said, you're still going to want to try to find other ways to boost your will save score. And certainly reflex doesn't hurt to have a boost either, though you're not going to be suffering as much given that we have a good dexterity score that gives us a solid modifier, and the upcoming abilities help to mitigate the impact armor would otherwise have on that. Which, right here, armor training at 3rd level reduces your armor check penalty by 1 and increases your max dexterity bonus by 1. This also increases every 4 levels. You can't decrease the armor check penalty to anything lower than 0, but reducing that check penalty is really, really handy to have. I mean, it allows you to climb easier and swim better while wearing your heavy armor. Not that those things are necessarily going to come up a whole lot, but just having that out of the way is nice to have. But most important is getting more of your dexterity bonus to come through while you're wearing that armor and allowing it to apply to your armor class and your reflex saves. That's absolutely critical for any fighter. But these are not all the abilities that they have, although there's not much more. You also get weapon training in addition to that armor training, which comes in at 5th level. You select a weapon group and you gain a +1 to hit, damage, and combat maneuver checks, and you're able to pick out more on successive levels. Just to give you an idea here, these are actually all of the different weapon categories that you can receive training in, and this includes axes, blades heavy, which are going to be like your long swords and great swords, blades light, which are your short swords, scimitars, and the like, bows, close weapons, which would be things like daggers, crossbows, double weapons, which, double swords, double axes. Not a category I'm a fan of, but we'll dive into that another time. Flails, firearms, hammers, monk weapons, natural weapons, so your fists, feet, teeth, claws, things like that. Pole arms, siege engines, which, unless you're building into something specifically focusing on sieges, this is something that you're not going to pick up. Really, I think this is just something that's here for dungeon masters to throw in and go, hey, I'm going to make a really badass siege engineer. He's going to be commanding this trebuchet or ballista, whatever. So that's what that's for. It's for DMs. And there's also spears, thrown weapons, and tribal weapons, which includes things like clubs, hand axes, throwing spears, and the like. And the weapon groups that are marked off blue here are largely going to be the ones that we want to focus on overall. Specifically, heavy blades is what we want to pick out for our build. Although pole arms make a very excellent alternate in this case because we're going to be focusing on a fighter build that uses two hands on weapon to get that strength and a half damage bonus to their weapon. So pole arms fit that category. Blades heavy, blades light can as well, but and then bows just make a solid ranged option overall. And then again, so do thrown weapons, but thrown weapons, throwing daggers, hand axes, and the like, just don't have quite the same range as a composite longbow will. So I'd recommend going with bows over thrown weapons. But again, if you want to switch things around a little bit and just have a little bit more of your own personal touch and flair to your character, please, by all means, do so. And then we have Armor Mastery, which kicks in at 19th level. You gain a damage reduction of 5 that's not overcome by anything whenever you are wearing armor or using a shield. So that can be light armor, medium armor. It can be cloth armor. The shield could be just a small buckler, and you get a damage reduction of 5, which is really damn cool. But it comes in at 19th level. It would have been better, like 5 levels earlier. But still, take the damage reduction when you can get it. And of course, for the fighter's capstone ability is Weapon Mastery. Weapon Mastery is awesome, although again, you're not getting it till level 20. You pick one weapon. Any critical threats that you roll with this weapon are confirmed, and the damage multiplier increases by 1. In addition to this, you cannot be disarmed while wielding this weapon. So, say you go with a greatsword. It's a 19 to 20 for its critical threat range, and it does times 2 damage most of the time. So if you roll a 19, you don't have to roll to confirm the critical again. It's automatically confirmed, and that damage multiplier goes from a 2 to 3. So you're dealing triple damage on a critical hit, which, by the time you hit level 20, with all the potential damage modifiers you have in there, that's going to be a hefty chunk of damage that you deal right off the bat there. And to top it off, you're impossible to be disarmed with this particular weapon, unless some incredibly unusual circumstances arise. This is a pretty solid bunch of abilities to have overall, and really, it can't be overstated how awesome that is. And overall, all of these abilities, while there's not a huge number of them, they do come together to make a really solid damage dealing class. But these class abilities are not all that the fighter has going for them. They also have a very limited skill pool. They get 2 skill points plus their intelligence modifier per level, and intelligence is typically a dump stat, and certainly for this build, it is a dump stat, so you're not going to be the most overwhelmingly skilled character. Leave a lot of the skill-oriented stuff to your rogues, to your bards, etc., etc., etc. But anyways, the skills that you do have are Climb. Climb is the first one here, and the decreasing armor check penalties that you get, coupled with the high strength that you should be having, make a 1-point investment viable, because that 1 point dropped in there with your strength. You also get that +3 miscellaneous modifier for dropping a point into a class skill. So, starting off, say you have a 20 strength, that's a +5 modifier there. 1 from the 1 skill point that you drop in, with another 3, you're looking at a +9 total there for your climb skill at level 1. That ain't too bad at all. That's going to get you through most whatever skill challenges for climb that you might be coming along with. Then after that we have Handle Animal. This one is not really all that useful for you. You're not a ranger, and really a lot of the handle animal checks that you might be making will be for things like whatever mount you might be on, whether it's a horse or some kind of dire tiger if you're going with something crazy exotic. You can make a ride check rather than handle animal. Especially considering that handle animal works off of a dump stat, which is charisma, you're better off just skipping this one. And a similar thing goes for intimidate. If your DM allows you to substitute stats, then make this a blue because you're going to be using your strength to intimidate people, largely by probably doing something that's overwhelmingly terrifying and just demonstrates how powerful you really are. But otherwise, if you're just working straight from your charisma, I'd say just avoid it altogether and don't let words or any shows of strength intimidate people. Just hit them, just stab them, whatever you need to do. Just let the weapons do the talking in that case. That'll be more than enough terrifying for most people. Knowledge dungeoneering, though, is probably one of the only skills that is going to be inconsistently useful to you. Lets you identify so many monsters. It can have other ranges of applications depending on how you spin it and sell it to your DM, and if they're willing to work with that. The big drawback, though, is that it works off of intelligence, and that's a dump stat for you. So you're not going to be the best at identifying different monsters, but you know what? This one certainly doesn't hurt to drop some points into and getting that miscellaneous +3 modifier on, because having an extra set of eyes able to do that is handy. And then following right along after that, we have knowledge engineering, which doesn't come up a whole lot and is going to run off of a dump stat, again, your intelligence. Really, the only time I could see this coming up is, well, if you're running a siege engine and you're uh, checking out the structure of whatever it is you're aiming at, the walls of a fortress or a bridge. If you're looking, whatever structure it is you're looking to take out, this can help you identify weak points to target, maybe deal a little bit of extra damage, or bring the structure down faster. But again, that's a very specific use, and with just such a low intelligence, you're not really going to be getting that much use out of it. Then after that, we have ride. Ride can be useful. It's good for early modes of travel, and it's going to be particularly good for mounted builds. The only thing is, there's other classes that do mounted combat much better than you. Paladins, for one, with their steed animal companion that they get, and then Cavaliers. Cavaliers have all kinds of mounted combat bonuses that just work really well for them. I mean, Cavaliers, it's kind of right in the name there. But this one certainly doesn't hurt, and if you're going with some kind of a mounted archery build, then hey, this could be a lot of fun. Definitely use mounted archery to keep moving in and out of range. This might even go up to being blue rather than green, kind of yellow, good to okay-ish. And then the next skill is survival. And like with handle animal, again, you're not a ranger. At most, this is going to be a 1 point dropped into it just to kind of have it there in case you need to be rolling survival checks, whether that's for starting fires, foraging for food, tracking animals or opponents. But again, leave it to the ranger, leave it to the rogue, let them do most of the survival stuff. You're there to hit things. And the last skill on the list is swim. And do you remember what I said about climb? Drop 1 point into it between that 1 point, the +3 miscellaneous modifier, and your strength score. That's probably going to see you through most of the challenges you're going to need to try to overcome. And every now and then, if you really need to, say it's a campaign based on the water or near water, then, maybe the occasional point every now and then. Or if you have nothing else good to throw it into, which, let's be honest, we don't have a lot of good skills here. But that's really it for the skills. And the class abilities, there's not an overwhelming number of them, but the selections you get to make with some of those class abilities, like your weapon training, that's really where you're going to get a lot of value out of the fighter, especially with the combat feats that you get to select. And speaking of combat feats, that's what we're going to be taking a look at next time around, next Saturday, for the Pathfinder Fighters Guide. If you enjoyed today's video, then hell, go on down there and click on the like button. And if you liked this content here so far, there's going to be a couple other videos popping up over this way. And if you've been enjoying everything done here so far, then hell, go on down there and hit that subscribe button. We'll be more than happy to have you here. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.